1. What is going on, everybody? It is Maxwell with the Virtual World Society podcast here live at AWE in Vienna. Oh, so very exciting. Been very much enjoying riding the e-scooters. I don't know if you've had a chance.
Amazing.
Oh, they're so much fun. Great way to get around the city. Alex Coulombe, thank you so much for joining me for the Virtual World Society podcast.
Thank you for having me, Maxwell. Happy to be here.
And you are such a fantastically brilliant individual and professional in this industry. And I really mean that. And again, especially being able to connect with everybody in this business, that's what makes AWE for me really exciting. What does AWE mean to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're already hitting on it. The opportunity to connect with all these incredible individuals working across different verticals, different industries. I think there's also a bit of a shared trauma that some of us have about, it's like, oh, you had that struggle with Unity too or whatever. Like we can kind of commiserate and help each other out, almost like a support group. Like, we're all in this together. We all want to see this industry succeed, and it's a really generous, welcoming, warm community for all of us.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? That when we come to AWE, that is the big thing that I notice, is that everybody is really welcoming and is very, I say that like it's a big surprise, but I've been in multiple industries and it hasn't always been that way. Why do you think that is with AWE?
I think at AWE, especially because there's a long history of this organization, and the people who run it, Ori and Sonia and people like that, they also kind of set the tone for what kind of inclusivity and what kind of, welcoming tone that they want to set for everything. So it comes from the top down, and I think everything from the speakers who are selected, the events going on, what we see here in the exhibit hall, it just kind of gives everyone the right vibes, if we want to talk about vibes, for like what we're trying to do here, and I think it all just feels really good. Yeah,
it does feel good, and I love that there's so much fascination and enthusiasm from everybody. That's definitely what helps me a lot, because that passion, it feels really good. And you yourself, how did you get into the XR industry? How did you get into this specific niche of tech?
Absolutely. So I used to think my career, my trajectory was very scattered, because I came from loving architecture, loving live theater, and loving emerging technology. And in the 2000s, those felt like very different pursuits. Yeah. But then, of course, I started to work as a real architect. I worked for Raphael Vignoli as well as a few other firms after graduating from Syracuse University in 2010. And I very quickly found myself at a company called Fisher Dax Associates Theater Planning and Design, which is an architecture consultancy that specializes entirely in designing theaters. So first it's like, okay, now I'm starting to merge architecture and theater together, and not only was I helping to design theaters, but also thinking about actual productions that would be happening in New York City, Broadway, and the Park Avenue Armory, and Lincoln Center, places like that. And then I started working there in 2012, and Maxwell, what happened in 2013? Do you remember?
That's a few things come to mind.
Yeah,
a few things.
The DK1 was a big one
that's
for
right.
me there. So getting the opportunity to be a part of the Oculus Rift DK1 Kickstarter, getting that headset in, and then starting to say, oh wait, I don't need to have all these clients who are trying to help understand buildings and shows with plans and sections and all these orthographic drawings. I can just put them in a VR headset now, and they go, oh. So now the conversations become less about like, wait a minute, like is this a good seat view? I'm looking at a plan, this seems like a bad seat view, and now you're just putting them in a headset and they're going, oh, this is a great seat view. And like the conversations become so much more nuanced. Right away in 2013, it suddenly became like, oh, well, let's talk about like the ergonomics of this railing, because it feels like maybe it's a little too in my face. Can we lower that? Can we soften it? And it just changed the game entirely for like how me and my collaborators as designers could start to work together. And then that picked up into like, creating a company and starting to specialize in more things besides just architecture. And now we're doing not only pre-visualization for things in the real world, but also exploring, things that only ever are going to happen virtually. Real world need not apply.
Yeah. And the technology has advanced to the point where now it's not like the DK1 where you're trying to basically configure like, all right, is this quality all there is? Can we go from there? Definitely an amazing technology to start off with. Yeah. But where we are now from where we had started during that time period, how far do you think we've advanced in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, tremendously. I think if someone had told me that by now we would have inside-out tracking, headsets that could power something like, Batman and some of the abilities we're seeing there.
Excited to play.
I know, yeah, it's so good. And then, of course, the Orion glasses and some of these devices that are still kind of on the horizon, they're not available yet, but we see now these flags being planted of like, here's where things could be going. going. I think it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day frustrations of being, an XR developer and like things that don't quite work as well as they should, and this broke, this crashed, etc. But when you zoom out a little bit, I think there's a ton to be optimistic and excited and honestly just grateful for.
Absolutely. When we do zoom out, in regards to the Orion glasses, you had an opportunity to demo these, which is very, very exciting. As far as where they are right now, what are your thoughts?
I think where they are right now is obviously not where we're going to see when they release to the public, but again, they're kind of setting a standard that, if nothing else, throws down a bit of a gauntlet and tells Apple and Google and Microsoft, if they want to get back in this game, like, here's what you need to try to rise to. Like, here's what we can do, with our silicon carbide and like something that is not scalable, but everything from like the way it fills up your field of view, like it's 70, which is the same as the Magic Leap 2, but it feels much bigger. Like in there, I couldn't emphasize enough how like it just felt like the view was going to the edge of the frames, and that was incredible. Never got hot over the whole course of my demo. Multiplayer was seamless. Things were anchored in such a clear way, like better than what you get with shared spatial anchors in Quest headsets right now. So I was tremendously impressed that they're just showing this as like a prototype, which, by the way, I don't know if Meta would have shown Orion if not for the Apple Vision Pro. And so just this general like back and forth of right now Meta and Apple, but we'll see LG and Sony and all these other companies start to join that fight. That's the best thing that can be happening for this industry now, for us all to be, as consumers and developers, to benefit from this competition where everyone's trying to one-up each other.
I really get goosebumps as soon as you said this benefit from them fighting each other, because you're so right about the gauntlet that they throw down and basically saying like, here's what we got. Yeah. What do you got? Is it better? Is it worse? It is just like when Zuckerberg, came on online and went on a whole rant about the Meta Quest 3 versus the Apple Vision Pro and the price and everything. It was a little bit of a sassy fight, and I was here for it. Yeah, I was here for it. I really liked that. 10 years into the future, 5 to 10 years into the future, with this fighting continue, with that continuation, what do you think is going to happen? Because it seems like things are accelerating pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see with this glasses form factor, which, I think Meta and Ray-Ban have already been really thrilled with the success of the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which for those who don't know, of course, doesn't have a display. It's audio and it has AI and takes pictures and video. But seeing how excited people are about that form factor and the utility they can get from using that, like they're not playing games, but they're getting a lot of use out of that. That's the direction I'm most excited about right now. 90% of the experiences my company is building in New York City are still in VR headsets, but as soon as that becomes a more tangible direction to go, that's what I'm most excited about, because I've hit the limit, I think, of the people that I can get to put on a VR headset. There are important stakeholders and clients and users that are just like, I don't want to mess up my hair, I don't want to mess up my makeup, I don't want people laughing at me, I'm going to look silly, whatever. Any number of reasons why they don't want to put on a VR headset, and that's fine. Like, I can accept that. We have other ways to get them into these experiences. But the moment I'm like, can you just put on these glasses? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. Like, I don't mind wearing glasses. That's going to be it.
That's a huge game changer, because all of the general public are now probably going to be on board with VR, AR, MR in a way that they just weren't before, especially with how bulky everything is. Obviously, we know it's a lot less bulky than it used to be. When I put it on my virtual reality students for the first time, they say, these are heavy, and I'm like, you got no idea. We used to wear weighted vests on our face, and now it's really incredible and more efficient. And especially in regard to these new kind of easier to utilize experiences as a developer, I definitely want to talk about the VR Christmas Carol. I'm very, very excited about that. Tell me a little bit more about that. How did that implementation come to be?
Yeah, so this started a few years ago. So we've been involved, of course, with pre-visualizing real shows that are happening on real stages. And we had this really interesting transition during the pandemic where, after speaking at a number of theater conferences, IDIAC, TCG, USITT, I could name a few more, where we were demoing VR technology to a lot of different theater companies. They were excited about it, but it was kind of like, this is really different from what we normally do. And we got this call from the Actors Theater of Louisville, this amazing, prestigious theater company out of Louisville, and they said, hey, we're trying to get back to business as usual after the pandemic, and we want to do this one-man version of Christmas Carol. They asked if Agile Lens, my company, could put together videos to be projected on scrims of the ghosts of Christmas Carol, Marley, Ghost of Christmas Past, etc. And we realized as we're having these discussions that, like, well, they really want us to build out a lot with these characters. There's mocap, there's a lot of detail with the costumes, they want environmental things. So I kind of like raised my hand a little bit and said, like, would you guys be okay with us also doing a fully virtual reality version of this show? So this is 2021. And they said, oh yeah, sure. So we got our good friend Ari Tar, who's been acting in this space for as long as that's been possible.
I love Ari.
And Ari's amazing. And so he's so game to like try anything. So like the first year we did this, we were using Accent suits and Technoprops helmets and Live Link face. Over the years, we've developed into doing now stuff with, this year we have Sony sponsoring us with the Mokopi system, and we're using the Mokopi system in combination with the MetaQuest Pro. So Ari and Debbie Deere, who's playing the ghosts, they can see each other, they can make eye contact, they can engage with the audience much more, and then we're getting this level of performance capture that you typically would not see for a live show like this, especially when the actors are able to look at you. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, it's amazing the creativity that you guys have when thinking of how do we do performance in virtual reality, how do we utilize this technology, because a lot of people will feel lost and a little bit overwhelmed. And in regard to, especially, I want to take an opportunity to plug the podcast, right? Because these podcasts help utilize folks like us that are knowledgeable, but we want to share with others, hey, this is what this technology about, and here's a breakdown of it, and here's how it works. Let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same goals I think we have across these different podcasts. With the unofficial Unreal Engine podcast, it's coming from a place of wanting to educate the community, tell exciting stories. Also, I really make an effort to try to make sure we go through struggles that incredible creators have had, so people know they're not alone. Recently had Corey Strasberger of Xanadu and Blue on the podcast, Matt Workman, who made Cinetracer and is doing all these amazing things in Unreal. And so these are amazing people who, like, you look at what they're putting out there as like one-man armies, and you're like, you know, they seem to be on top of the world. And so for me to get them on a podcast and be able to say, like, what's something that really like took you for a spin, and you hear Corey talking about, you know, getting sick or like dealing with like Unreal Engine crashing, and Matt Workman dealing with like juggling all these different projects and trying to work from home. Like, these are important conversations, I think, and also serve as a bit of an oral history, kind of an archive, because as this technology is moving so fast, it's really nice to be able to look back and say, like, wow, you know, like if I listen to one of these episodes from 5 years ago, you can kind of hear, like, yeah, things have actually gotten better, easier, faster, stronger. People are able to do more with less, and I think it just kind of helps you, again, kind of zoom out and see the forest for the trees and feel like we're headed in the right direction. Amazing, and people can find it through where they usually find their podcasts? Yep, it's you can search the unofficial Unreal Engine podcast. Usually the handle on most social media is Unoff Unreal Pod, just to keep it a little shorter. Yeah, which is nice. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the Virtual World Society podcast. It's always exciting to be able to interview people live here from the Expo Hall. We are in Vienna right now. Yeah. Now, if I could ask you, if you could describe the excitement of AWE right now in maybe a sentence, what would you say? I feel like it should be some kind of broken sentence of lots of random words. Yes. Amazing, happy, fun times, great smelling directions. Yeah. I love that very much. It does weirdly smell good here. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it's a Vienna thing. Maybe it's a Vienna thing. Yeah, everything in Vienna does smell good. It really does. Lots of bakeries like around here. Yes, that's right. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. People definitely got to check out your podcast as well. I think it's going to be really exciting and fun for people. And once again, we're at AWE in Vienna for AWE Europe. Thank you, and we will talk to you next time.